I'm excited to introduce the speaker today. Today our speaker is Starr Nolan, who has been loving, studying, and trying to live the Dharma since she met Sujata Yasa at Anattasati Magga Sangha 14 years ago. Her special areas of focus and study include the Heart Sutra and the Lojong Slogans, especially Norman Fisher's training in compassion, Zen Teachings on the Practice of Lojong. Starr is a clinical social worker in private practice in Asheville and has been supporting people in healing from trauma over 30 years. She is the executive director for Casting Carolinas, a nonprofit that provides free retreats for women living life after cancer. Starr greatly enjoys playing music with her band All Strings ReConsidered and has fly fished in many beautiful places all over the world. Starr, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share Anattasati Magga's Word of the Buddha classes. So before I actually get started with that, I'll just explain a little bit about these Word of the Buddha classes. We use a mala that's very different from the traditional mala. So our mala has 58 large beads on it, and it has a key, which is the Anattasati Magga key. So we use this specifically as a practice tool, and it's a guide for our daily recitation. So that's essentially what Word of the Buddha classes are, is that they are working our way around the mala. And it contains a condensation of all the teachings of Buddhism. And it's divided into sections. So you can just see this is how we arrange our daily recitation, and the Word of the Buddha classes are based on this. So when we first begin lay minister training, we're given this booklet that has the beads and the commentary, and we're instructed just to read the commentary. And this we do for a good long time when we're in lay minister training. So the commentary is by Sujata, and we as a Sangha have worked to name these beads. But as we progress to a certain point, we're then allowed to add to the teaching. And so this is one of my areas of study. For many years, I've been on a journey with the Heart Sutra. And so if there's time, which I think there will be, then I will add a little bit of what I have gathered about the Heart Sutra, especially that knowledge which has led to the knowing of the Heart Sutra. So our 14th bead, then, when we go around, our 14th bead, the recitation is Namo Prajna Paramita Hridaya, homage to the wisdom in the heart. Okay. So as you all probably know, this is the title of a sutra. This is the Heart Sutra, considered the most important sutra in Buddhism. It contains within it the central teaching of Buddhism, a teaching that distinguishes Buddhism from all other spiritual practices and religions. So Namo means offering of praise or homage. Prajna means intrinsic wisdom of the heart, but it is also translated as universal life force. So one of those is pronounced prana and the other prajna. Then paramita is the practice, implies virtuous practices such as loving kindness and generosity. And then hridaya, the essence of intuitive awareness or of or pertaining to the heart, but not, of course, not the physical heart. So that's the translation of the 14th bead. So the 15th bead then is form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. This is the teaching of our spiritual ancestors, Gautama Buddha, and all the great teachers who have transmitted the Dharma to this precious day. So this bead expresses the contents of the Heart Sutra. It is offering an intuitive state, not dependent upon self-knowledge. So I will add that the Heart Sutra is experiential. We must be able to transcend our own senses and our own form. So this intuitive state or experiential state has no eyes, ears, feelings. It results from liberation from the time entrapment and freedom from dualities like right and wrong and male and female. This intuitive state is invulnerable to harm or fear. It is what I was before I was born and will be again and am now. So the 16th bead is blessed is the knowledge of emptiness, and that's been changed now to blessed is the knowing of emptiness. So we've shifted our language there just a bit. So again, blessed is revered, held in awe, honored by the one who experiences it. And the knowledge we are seeking is the experience, as I said, of emptiness. So total awakening is never-ending emptiness. Seventeenth bead then is homage to the devotees of this and all paths of self-purification. May all find simplicity, the joyous and practical guide. Now we're referencing the person who turns away from clinging to things and objects and other people and renounces all that both attract and distract them. The teachings say this person becomes like a withered log, and this is an honored state. This poverty is a voluntary condition. This person clings to nothing, possesses nothing. Observing a life of voluntary poverty, this person enjoys the truth of not being possessed. Even being possessed by love is a limiting influence. So just a thought about the word simplicity. May all find simplicity, the joyous and practical guide. A commentary on that. If you say hello and have to explain it, that's not simple. What is sought here is sharp clarity, the ability to edit, to audit, and to see. You can ask yourself, no matter what I'm doing, can I simplify it? Can I get to the bottom of it? Efforts from your body, mind, and mouth take the greatest concentration. Buddhism offers, watch what you say. And the 18th bead, Dharma being the contents of enlightenment in which there is no bondage and no suffering, offers freedom from the cankers of ignorance and fear. Dharma means both the teachings themselves and experiencing the truth of the teachings. So this one sentence can become two. The teachings offer freedom from the cankers of ignorance and fear. And then when experiencing truth of the contents of enlightenment, there is no bondage and no suffering. All fear arises in anticipation of loss of body, life, thoughts, identity. If one lives the experience of truth, no fear arises. And this is actually stated in the Heart Sutra. And then we have throughout, as we go around, we have a marker bead. And so as we end each section of the teachings, we say, in this way, I do most deeply vow to train the self. All that comes into our minds is conditioned and deliberate. We vow to train ourselves using this path and the guidelines it offers. We're also vowing to stop believing our inner conditioned voice, our inner conditioned emotions, and our inner conditioned body impulses. We cannot be sure of the existence of even the most of the next moment, so we must be aware. So we must be aware of death. We must learn to let what conditionally arises in each moment die, so we will be practiced and ready for the death transition. So that is the word of the Buddha with commentary. And as I said, these can be very brief teachings, but what we would normally do is pause and ask if anyone has any comments, thoughts, or questions. So I will do that. If anyone has anything to ask or any thoughts to add.
I had a couple thoughts come up. Can you reread what you said about no fear, what that was in the context of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that is a quote directly from the Heart Sutra. And so what I was going to do, if we have time, which I think we probably do, as I studied the Heart Sutra, I looked at so many different translations because it seems that a lot of teachers have decided to translate it in a particular way, to change the language. But essentially, it says directly in the Heart Sutra, without hindrance, the mind has no fear. And that's what that refers to. That actually is from the translation that I was getting ready. I'm going to share with you all, just because there's so many different translations, but each one has a line in it that says, without hindrance, the mind has no fear. So that's really the practice. That's what the Heart Sutra is teaching us.
I see. That's interesting because I had done some meditation practices on emptiness, and the feeling that I connected with the most was a feeling of fear. Mm-hmm. Like, sort of meditating on like the emptiness of the skandhas and my body and my feelings, my consciousness. I was almost overwhelmed with fear. And so yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts on in the process of removing those hindrances and those illusions, how one approaches those feelings of fear.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people have that very similar experience. There's actually a book called the Heart Attack Sutra for that very reason, is that when people approach this whole idea of emptiness, that it can be really, at first, be very intimidating. Yeah, I think we certainly are given the opportunity to work with the fear that arises, to see it, and to see, what are the thoughts, what is really going on here that I'm experiencing fear, when I attempt to rest in a place of emptiness. So to me, that's just, okay, that's part of it. I had the same exact response that you did at first. When I first came upon the Heart Sutra, and And then I heard, oh, wow, this is like the central teaching of Buddhism. So, I was like, wow, I really need to really get this. This is me, right? I've got to get it. And so then I'm reading all these different translations that use the word empty. And for me, that's a really, kind of scary concept. But what I was going to share with you all today is Joan Halifax's retranslation of the Heart Sutra, because I've had the great opportunity to take this to different groups in the last couple of years, and this question comes up a lot. Like, okay, what is emptiness? And I think, when we study the Dharma, we trip over words a lot. We get stuck on words, and the word empty, it's very difficult to get free from traditional, understandings of empty as being some sort of pejorative term, right? It means it's missing something. So yeah, I think it does offer the opportunity to look at the fear. But for me, I've come full circle. The reason I was attracted to the Roshi Jones translation of it is because she took the word empty completely out of it. But as I studied it and stayed with it, and as I said, I've been on a journey with it for a very long time now, I came all the way back around to really relaxing with that understanding of emptiness, as a practice. Because Heart Sutra is experiential, right? It's designed to be experiential, and it's almost like one big huge koan, designed to kind of shock us into, I think, into a place of relaxing. So it is a really amazing practice. So I thought that since I have a little bit of time, I could share with you all. As I said, I studied this and I looked at so many different versions, and I put together teachings on the Heart Sutra. And when I do the teachings, we read the different translations of the Heart Sutra. But what really had an impact on me was one of the first things that I came upon, which was Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching on emptiness. And so, when I start the teachings on Heart Sutra, I typically will just share Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching on emptiness, because it is in itself an amazing experiential teaching. And it allows us to get to that place of boundless or emptiness, where wisdom and compassion join. So if you all will join me, we'll do Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching on emptiness. And when he does this, you can actually find this on YouTube if you want to listen to it. It's an amazing thing to listen to if you haven't. He holds up a flower. He holds up a flower. So here's Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching on emptiness. Emptiness, shunyata. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. When you look at this flower, you see that the flower is full of everything: the sunshine, the cloud, soil, time and space, everything, including your own consciousness. The flower is full of the cosmos. Why should we describe it as empty? The Bodhisattva Avalokita, and this is how he shortens the name to Avalokita, while looking deeply into the 5 skandhas, found them equally empty. Empty of what? Bodhisattva tell us. So again, in the Heart Sutra, this is not the Buddha teaching, right? The Buddha is not delivering the Heart Sutra. It's delivered by the great Bodhisattva of compassion. We see that everything is full of the cosmos, and you say that they are empty. So when you ask her this, she will tell you, you are right. The flower is full of the cosmos. The flower is only empty of one thing. That is separate existence, separate being, self-nature, empty of a self-nature. Because the flower cannot be by herself alone. The flower has to interbe with the whole cosmos. If you remove the non-flower elements from her, she will vanish. She cannot be. She can only interbe. So that's part of Thich Nhat Hanh's emptiness teaching that gives us this beautiful experience. So one of the reasons I have resonated to the Heart Sutra is that it really was very part of a very radical shift in Buddhism. It's the second shortest of a huge volume of work called the Prajnaparamita Sutras. Right? So it's a condensation, the second shortest of those, some of which are very, very long. If you've seen these or studied these, you see that some of them are extremely long sutras, but they mark the second turning of the wheel in Buddhism. So it really was a radical shift from the earlier teachings, which were really focused on self-liberation. After the Buddha's death, the Sarvastivadin Buddhists became, more numerous, and the teachings there were sort of, were like, okay, here are all the many steps that you have to go through and can go through in order to finally, at some point in some lifetime, achieve enlightenment. So it's really focused on individual achievement, but probably not achievement. That might not be the correct word. Individual practice, in order to reach enlightenment. And then the Heart Sutra, the Prajnaparamita Sutras appeared on scene. Interestingly, nobody knows who wrote these, but they are hugely influential in Buddhism. As I said, the beginning of the second turning of the wheel. And so again, to look at the Heart Sutra, you see that this is not the Buddha teaching, right? This is the great Bodhisattva of compassion, Kanzeon. The Buddha is in samadhi. The Buddha's presence is more of a spiritual or energetic cosmic presence. So the Buddha becomes less of a teaching, a teacher, human teacher, and more of a cosmic presence. And the great Bodhisattva of compassion, and interestingly, this is the only one of those sutras that this Bodhisattva appears in. But she teaches the Heart Sutra to Shariputra, who is one of the Buddha's disciples, and is kind of representative of that whole initial approach of self, improvement of self. Because the shift here is, it changes radically, and it says, hey, guess what? let's really go to compassion. let's really shift and think about others. And that is, kind of the missing piece to enlightenment. It's interesting. And the Dalai Lama's teaching on the Heart Sutra, he says, well, this first part of Buddhism, the first turning of the wheel, is sort of like what we do individually when we're really working on, our spiritual practice, is we might be focused on ourselves and what we need to do, etc. But then the second turning of the wheel with all the, with the Prajnaparamita Sutras, encourages us to let go of all of that and move into the higher level energy of wisdom and compassion. So, as I said, for me, I have to stay away from too much knowledge of the Heart Sutra and go back to the experience of it, reminding myself that really is it. It's supposed to be experiential. So Roshi Joan heard a lot of people's feedback just about emptiness, and she decided to retranslate the Heart Sutra and take the word emptiness out of it and replace it with boundless. And she and Kaz Tanahashi retranslated it together. And they had really had an intention. Again, the Heart Sutra is about compassion for others. And they realized that people were actually suffering trying to understand the Heart Sutra. So they replaced a lot of the language that they saw people tripping over or having a really hard time with, and retranslated it. So I'll just share this with you just because it's short. Again, the Heart Sutra is the second shortest of all these, and it is a condensation. So here's the sutra on the heart of realizing wisdom beyond wisdom, which is, again, Joan Halifax. Avalokitesvara, who helps all to awaken, moves in the deep course of realizing wisdom beyond wisdom. Sees that all 5 streams of body, heart, and mind are without boundary, and frees all from anguish. O Shariputra, who listens to the teachings of the Buddha, form is not separate from boundlessness. Boundlessness is not separate from form. Form is boundlessness. Boundlessness is form. Feelings, perceptions, inclinations, and discernment are also like this. O Shariputra, boundlessness is the nature of all things. It neither arises nor perishes, neither stains nor purifies, neither increases nor decreases. Boundlessness is not limited by form, nor by feelings, perceptions, inclinations, or discernment. It is free of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, free of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and any object of mind, free of sensory realms, including the realm of the mind. It is free of ignorance and the end of ignorance. Boundlessness is free of old age and death, and free of the end of old age and death. It is free of suffering, arising, cessation, and path, and free of wisdom and attainment. Being free of attainment, those who help all to awaken abide in the realization of wisdom beyond wisdom, and live with an unhindered mind. Without hindrance, the mind has no fear. Free from confusion, those who lead all to liberation embody profound serenity. All those in the past, future, present, and future who realize wisdom beyond wisdom manifest unsurpassable and thorough awakening. Know that realizing wisdom beyond wisdom is no other than this wondrous mantra, luminous, unequaled, and supreme. It relieves all suffering. It is genuine, not illusory. So set forth this mantra of realizing wisdom beyond wisdom. Set forth this mantra that says, Gate, gate, para gate, para samgate, bodhi sabaha. Which is going on beyond, translated the mantra in many different ways. The teachings actually say that if you can just understand the mantra, then you have understood the Heart Sutra. You can get it. So, anybody have any comments or questions now about the Boundless Heart Sutra? So if nobody has any questions or thoughts on it, again, so it's great when you don't have questions. Almost, it's like, okay, stay right there. Maybe that's it. So one of the things that's had a really big impact on me and that has been very useful in the teachings that I've shared with others has been Joan Halifax's teaching on the Heart Sutra, the Boundless Heart Sutra. So I can share some of these with you all as well, just so that you have some of her thoughts on the Boundless Heart Sutra. Let's see here. So here's what Roshi Joan has to say about the Boundless Heart Sutra. She says, I have chanted the Heart Sutra in various translations for nearly 40 years. For many of those years, I simply chanted it and was quietly confounded by it and let it sink into my practice, like a shiny penny sinks into a deep, cool well. It held a kind of promise for me, for the promise of realizing no fear was a gleaming possibility that could not be taken lightly. So interesting that the concept of no fear, her curiosity about that, she mentioned that. So she goes on to explain that she and Kaz Tanahashi worked together to do this translation. She says she had never felt at ease with the common translation of shunyata as emptiness. So she, in contemplating the truth of boundlessness, she contemplated several qualities of this state beyond all qualities. So here are her qualities of boundlessness. As she points out, even though space, emptiness, or boundlessness may seem to have no qualities, there are some characteristics that arise out of our experience. So I was like, okay, if you're going to try to give us qualities, but no, she says there are characteristics that she can use to point us to what she's trying to say. She says these characteristics form a basis for meditation practice. So the first characteristic is not knowing. An important characteristic that may meet us in practice is not knowing. The mind that is free of ideas, opinions, conceptions, the mind that is fresh, open, unmediated, the mind that does not grasp onto that which is solid and secure, the mind that does not seek a mooring. I think that's really where we're running into the fear. Is that what we know about our minds and our consciousness is that, one of the first things that we do is seek to label things. I love Pema Chodron's snapshot practice. Have you all heard of that? Have you done snapshot practice? It's a really interesting practice because you can do it all day. But what she recommends is that you just close your eyes and then you just turn your head and then just open your eyes and be very observant. And notice what's the first thing that you do. For me, I go, oh, door. I start to label, right? I mean, the mind wants to grasp, and that's one of the things that we're trying to practice here, letting go of grasping is, but first you recognize, well, that's what the mind wants to do. It wants to hold on, it wants to grasp, it wants to label, it wants, it does so many different things like instantly. So, resting with not knowing is a practice. The mind does not seek a mooring. The great don't know of Bodhidharma, the don't know mind of contemporary Korean monk Seung San, the beginner's mind of Suzuki Roshi, the inconceivable of Vimalakirti, are all ways of experiencing the inexpressible when the mind is open and free. What is this non-conceptual, spontaneous mind? This wisdom beyond wisdom? Frequently in the literature of Zen, it is pointed to through metaphors. And Roshi Joan, like lots of other Zen teachers, likes to use these little metaphors, these little examples. So here's her example. Dawu asked Shito, what is the essential meaning of the Buddha Dharma? And Shito replied, not to attain, not to know. Dawu responded, if there is some turning place when going on beyond or not? That's a question. If there is some turning place when going on beyond or not? And she too said, the boundless sky does not hinder the white clouds from flying. The boundless mind is not caught by thoughts, ideas, schemes, or themes. So not knowing is characteristic, quality number one. Number two, she says, it's groundlessness. Wisdom beyond wisdom and boundlessness is not grounded in anything at all. All is seen as impermanent, ever-changing, not fixed in time or space. Awakening cannot be arrived at through reasoning only and the dependence on the discursive mind. Reference points and preferences are often rooted in fear, the need of the small self to become more solid, more defined. And here she refers to what we were just talking about with that snapshot practice. The discursive mind that creates categories, conceptual schemes, and boundaries for self-protection is one that is caught in the net of fear. So again, she's kind of answering your question about, okay, here's how we use this to work with the fear that arises. So characteristic number three, she says, is immediacy. A third aspect of boundlessness is our present situation. We cannot explain it. No scientist can unfold it for us. Yet each moment is the repository of the past, present, and future. All the sutras are contained herein. Our practice is open to all of this present moment as the so-called object of our concentration, and to not be separate from it. This present moment is completely open to us if we do not resist it. The Bodhisattva Manjushri once walked into a great assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and remarked, "They have all found their original dwelling place." The experience of immediacy is our boundless original dwelling place, the realization of wisdom beyond wisdom. Not knowing, groundlessness, and immediacy are intimately connected. So the fourth concept, the last, I think this is the last one. No, there are five. Another concept is interconnectedness, which Thich Nhat Hanh does a beautiful job of teaching us about interconnectedness. Let's see, what does she say? A fourth characteristic of boundlessness is expression in the endless connections that flow through our very lives. In this present moment, nothing is missing. We are all here. Yet often we feel as though something is lacking, and the mind that grasps and holds onto beings and things finds its horizon shrinking instead of expanding. Okay. So Kanzeon reminds us that the discernment or discriminating consciousness is fundamentally about limitedness. This quality of mind gives us the impression that we have a self and the rest is other. But without otherness, there is nothing to discern, as there is no self or other. Other and discerning are, by their very nature, not separate from each other. Rather, they're completely contingent on each other. Realizing the contingency or interconnectedness of perceiver, perceiving, and object of perception is to unify the world through our experience. And finally, the last thing she references is giving no fear. By reframing the basic teachings of the Buddha through the perspective of boundlessness, the Heart Sutra may liberate us from all the hindrances, including the hindrance of enlightenment or awakening. Realizing boundlessness is a sword that cuts the root of self-clinging. If there is no self to become enlightened, then awakening is not something to get, but is our very basic nature, including the dynamic aspects of our life. Realizing boundlessness, the 5 fears are ended. And so here are the 5 fears. I didn't know about the 5 fears until I found this teaching. The 5 fears include losing one's life, mind, reputation, support, and fear of teaching. There is no life, mind, reputation, or support to lose. There is nothing to teach, no one to teach, no one teaching. There is simply freedom from fear. This is the essence of the Heart Sutra, its power to free you and I from fear through the realization of great boundlessness. So that is what I have to offer for today. Anybody has any further questions, thoughts, anything to share? We welcome that. If not, then we will conclude the Dharma talk for today.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what you're offering us is a lifetime practice. Through,
Yes.
it's wouldn't mean anything to say, oh yeah, I get it, or yeah, I mean it's it's all the time. It's like, okay, yeah, I can see maybe a direction, but it's a practice and a deep practice. So thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing.
I was wondering, in your work with cancer patients, do you who are really intimately experiencing, many of those five fears,
Mm-hmm.
do you use the Heart Sutra to inform how you speak with them?
Actually, thank you for the question. I have developed a method, a retreat model based partly on Buddhist teaching and partly on a therapy model that I use called ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, which might as well be Buddhist practice. It goes so well with Buddhist practice. One of the things I recognized very early on as a trauma therapist is that it doesn't help to just sit and talk about trauma. In fact, it can bring up the fear. It can re-stimulate the traumatic experience, and cancer itself, it is a traumatic experience for, I would just say across the board, everyone experiences it as a trauma to some degree. Some people have full-blown traumatic experiences with it, though, and are never told. So the women that come to the retreats very often are surprised when I explain to them what happens when you experience a trauma. They realize, wow, I have post-traumatic stress. So I developed a model that's called FLOW. It's an acronym. And what we do is in our retreat, we teach the women skills for how to deal with the very top of the list is fear of cancer recurrence. And it's also the elephant in the room. And so, it's like, but when I ask the women that are at the retreat, what is your number one, most difficult, emotion to deal with? They're like fear of recurrence. So we teach them specifically how to work with fear. In Buddhism, as in this therapy model, we teach them to open to the F in my model is stop and breathe and learn to be with your breath. So, but then we look inside, which is what the L means. Actually, open to your fear. Feel it in your body. Notice what thoughts go with it, etc. So, it's a model that really is very much like what we've been taught. But then, in order, you work through open to it, learn about it. And then the last part, the W, is where am I going to go with it now? So we teach them the skill of, okay, be with it, know what you can know about it, but then turn toward one of your valued higher level actions. Okay. So a lot of them will choose kindness or compassion as a value. And then we say, what would be one compassionate action that you could give to yourself and others in this moment? So that's about as close to Buddhist practice as I can get. The women that attend our retreats very frequently come from traditional Christian backgrounds. And they are, a little bit fearful just of the idea of doing, meditation of any kind. So like Roshi Joan and Kaz, I had to look at my retreat model and make sure that I'm not scaring people with it, but languaging it in a way that it can be, received. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. All right, well, thank you all again.
Thank you, Starr.